As the World Chess Championship kicks off between Ding Liren and Jan Nepomniachtchi, I just want to show you guys Magnus's final game as the World Chess Champion officially, since he opted out of the World Chess Championship this year. And it's an interesting one. It's between Hikaru and Magnus, two of the most popular chess personalities out there. And I'm just gonna get into the game. So Magnus starts with c4. He's going for an English here. And Hikaru goes with knight f6. Very normal stuff here. Knight c3. I just want to contest the center here. And right away, Hikaru goes for e5. A strong move. And then here, Magnus plays knight f3, which looks like it might invite e4, but in that case, Magnus can just play knight g5, and there's gonna, like, for instance, plays here, Magnus plays knight g5, and it's really hard to defend this pawn. You can't really go d5 because you just it's the c pawn is there to protect that square. So let's say d5, c takes d5, and queen can't take because the knight's defending, so knight would have to take, and then we can just win back this pawn here. So e5 is playable, but Hikaru decides not to go down that route. Instead, he plays knight c6, and game continues. Magnus really wants to contest some of Hikaru's center control, so he ends up playing d4. Strong move. These are all still book moves, by the way. Hikaru takes back. Magnus plays knight d4. And then we get bishop b4. And here, a lot of times the idea is for this bishop to take this knight. We want to, give him more control over this e4 square for this knight. Getting rid of this knight is really just a way to, in some ways as well, just develop quickly, get castled. And so in many of these English type positions, Nimzo positions, bishop will take there. And here, very typical of the English, Magnus will play g3, try to fianchetto this light squared bishop, get it on the strong diagonal, try to contest this e4 square a little bit with the bishop. And here Hikaru simply just castles, which is an okay move, but the computer really wanted, as you can see here with the arrows, computer really wanted bishop to take. I'm gonna turn off the feedback here just so we don't spoil the computer moves necessarily. So yeah, Hikaru castles. Magnus, like I said, he plays bishop g2, and then Hikaru plays rook e8. He wants to get on this file where the king's still in the middle. Just a pretty strong natural developing move. Magnus castles, gets his king out of the center, and then Hikaru plays h6, which seems kind of slow to me, but I think the idea is to make it really difficult for this light squared bishop to develop here. I mean, you can't really get a g5. I mean, f4 is an idea, is a square, but I mean, really, Magnus would love to pin this knight, and then if he's able to do that, if he's able to play a knight d5, that's a pretty strong move. So Hikaru doesn't want to deal with all that, so he plays h6. Then we get a knight d5, hitting this bishop, and so Hikaru just decides to get rid of his Magnus's d5 knight. C takes d5, knight takes d4, queen takes d4, and here we're in this position where Hikaru plays queen e7, and he's putting a lot of pressure on this pawn, and here Magnus actually plays bishop e3, which seems kind of weird. I mean, a lot of times you don't really want to block this pawn, but it's a way to kind of cleverly defend this pawn. Obviously queen can't take the bishop because this f pawn defends, and it blocks off the attack on this e pawn temporarily. I mean, you could think about playing d4, but d4 is a little bit, that pawn is very fragile. In that case, you play d4, or you play e4, you might get hit with f5. So Magnus didn't really want to go through all that, so he ends up playing bishop e3. And here, Hikaru kind of does a similar thing. He brings his bishop back, and that seems a little bit cryptic, a little bit. But I mean, he kind of wants to block this pawn from moving. A couple other ideas involved. I think he's thinking about a queenside expansion. So wants to get his bishop out of the way first. Maybe it's also maybe a little bit of prophylaxis. You avoid a little bit of a3, b4 nonsense. So he plays that. Magnus develops his rook, gets up behind his queen, and yeah, here some of the queenside expansion begins with b6. Maybe ideas of getting this bishop onto b7. Try to put pressure on this isolated D pawn. Magnus brings his queen back. Maybe in the future, you might have ideas of sacrificing on h6. So, okay, Hikaru expands with a5, and then we get rook c1. So now Magnus has his rook on the his semi-open c file. Rooks look pretty well placed. Eventually this D file is probably going to open up. So Magnus looks like he has a pretty decent position, and the computer will agree with me. They say white's a little bit better, but not by a lot. So Hikaru puts his rook on b8, and I think the idea is getting out of possible tactics involved. If this bishop, he wants to move this bishop somewhere at some point, and if the bishop moves, this rook still here. d6 could be annoying because of the discovery with that on the rook. So he moves the rook out of the way, maybe possibly giving more options to expand this way. And then Magnus kind of wants to get rid of this bishop. Like I said, that's why Hikaru moved over, because eventually you're going to get rid of this bishop, and then his light square bishop's going to be a problem. And also, this is his better bishop. His light square bishop's still kind of locked behind all of his pawns, so he wants to get rid of Hikaru's stronger piece, right? So instead of just taking, that's gonna just help Magnus out. He finally develops his light squared bishop, puts more pressure on this pawn finally, and here now Magnus plays d4 at a better, more opportune moment. I mean, there's still a lot of pressure, but I mean, the queen really can't take first, because of this bishop. So then now Hikaru decides to take on f4 with his bishop, takes Magnus's bishop, and then queen's gonna recapture, and then we get d6. So if you look at the situation now, this light squared bishop in this feature seems like it's pretty strong. I mean, all of Hikaru's pawns are dark squares. So Magnus seems to have pretty good light square control here. Hikaru, he's got a pretty, nice bishop now. But I would say white is definitely still better. I mean, engine gives it about a plus 1.2 advantage. So nothing major, but I mean, it's a solid white. White's solidly better. And so now Magnus wants to maybe double up his rooks here. So he plays rook c3. Maybe ideas later, maybe have a rook lift. But really, the main thing is this. Hikaru's biggest weakness here is this c7 pawn. So Magnus wants to start just stockpiling the pressure on that, forcing black to defend. Yeah, so Magnus moves his queen back, preparing to be able to put more defenders on this, also opening this rook up. And maybe ideas of f5 are coming in the future. Yeah, so Magnus doubles up. Magnus plays rook e7, just defending the c7 pawn. And then Magnus here decides it's time to attack, time to expand. So he plays h4. And that's a pretty provocative move because, I mean, this rook's already here. Magnus wants to probably push g4, g5, really open up his king here. So this is basically, h4 is basically saying, I'm coming to attack you. And if you look at the time situation, Magnus still has 11 minutes, 15 seconds. Hikaru only has 5 minutes. I mean, so it's pretty, kind of, it's getting a little more dangerous for Hikaru. So Hikaru puts his bishop into b5, and then like I said, Magnus plays g4, and then Hikaru plays f6. He really kind of wants to slow down this this pawn storm here. But Magnus plays it anyways. So then we get f takes, h takes, and instead of h takes right away, we get rook f7 hitting this queen. Queen's got to do something, so queen goes back to g3, and now we see Hikaru take, and then instead of taking right away, Magnus decides to play bishop h3. If you take right away, you might get hit with something like queen f8, and then this pawn becomes really weak, and then Hikaru starts kind of gaining some of the initiative. So instead, Magnus decides to play this move, control some of this diagonal, also threaten to play maybe bishop e6, excuse me. So Hikaru's got to respond to that. So he brings his bishop back to basically prevent this move. And here, Magnus decides to play rook c7, rook takes c7. And here, the idea is if bishop takes, instead of taking the bishop right back away, you're going to take this rook probably, and then afterwards you take the bishop. So that's actually what happens. So rook takes f7, and then king takes f7, queen takes h3, and now we get a position where Hikaru's got these double pawns, but maybe Hikaru's got some ideas maybe of putting a rook on the h file at some point. But it's pretty equal position for the most part. White's a little bit better still, and like I said, Magnus wants to control this h file, keep the king from coming back up here, controlling a lot of important squares. So and also preventing the king from going back at all, because if the king goes back, then you're gonna get hit with queen h8, winning the rook. So yeah, so then Magnus wants to double up again, trying to put pressure on this pawn. So he brings his rook over to f8. He wants to move his king probably somewhere here to start threatening. But before that happens, Magnus plays rook c7, check, and then instead of, he could have actually, I was gonna say he could have taken this pawn, but that's not advisable at all, because then he gets hit with queen takes f2 check, and it's gonna lead to disaster. So instead, I'm thinking that Magnus wants to trade off this rook. So Magnus plays rook c8. King moves up, and then we get rook takes, king takes, and then we're in this very equal in game. Queen versus queen. The imbalance is Hikaru's got these double G pawns, but it's hard to break through. Magnus is probably best winning chances to somehow get this pawn through and promote that way. So he just has to check. King moves, and then the queen moves back to c8, and then we get a rook e5. I mean, queen e5, excuse me. And then queen comes back, king moves up, and then we Magnus starts moving his king forward, and really he wants to probably get his pawn to f3, bring his king under, and then maybe think about trading. Maybe not yet, because these pawns could be an issue, but eventually trade these queens and start getting these pawns rolling. Hikaru brings his king into f6, and then we get an important move, a4. a4 is important. It's something called the deep freeze. So if you look at these, this pawn can never move because we just take it, and really that pawn is really annoying for black to try to defend. And it really, with one pawn move, basically freezes his whole queen side. So h4 is a good move to play. White's about +1 here. king moves to e7. He's trying to get his king over because, you know, this is an important battlefield over here, battleground. King moves up, and then we get g6, and then king moves over. Like I said, you want to get your kind of kings behind the pawn to defend them. This pawn is hanging, but if Hikaru takes it, then Magnus is just gonna play queen g5 check. He's gonna win the other pawn. This whole position is gonna fall apart, so you can't afford to take this pawn. Queen moves back. King decides to move to d3. Again, he wants to get closer, try to get his king in here, take these pawns. Hikaru moves back to d8, and then we get queen g3. Wants to, you know, hit this pawn. If queen ever moves, then you're gonna be able to take d6 with check. Now king moves to f7 or c7, excuse me, defending his biggest weaknesses with his king. Like I said, you know, it's important to remember that the king is actually a very important piece in the end game. It becomes very powerful. You got to use if you want to win in games, you got to use your king effectively. And so Magnus does the same thing, defending this pawn, which is his biggest weakness. And then we get king b7, and here f3 is the top engine move, but Magnus decides to play king b3, and he kind of wants us to get his king in here, ideally. And then we get queen d4, which kind of stops that idea. Does hang this pawn, but if you take, again, these guys, the way they think, it's all about tactical defenses, you know. So technically you're leaving this pawn unprotected, but if you take, you know, again, Hikaru maybe takes on f2, Magnus takes here, and then you're probably gonna see, like for instance, let's say takes, and then check. King's got to go somewhere. Hikaru, you know, is just gonna keep harassing this king. So it's completely equal according to the computer, but Hikaru wants to maybe be careful about that. So he does hang this pawn, but again, same thing. So you take my pawn, I take your pawn. So he takes. Instead, Hikaru decides to play d3, queen d3, and then Magnus decides to play king a2. This king's very passive, but it's, you know, he wants to get out of any checks, possible checks and everything. So and he's thinking, you know, in case of this move, Magnus can play h3 and at some point, and so he plays king a3, and then we get queen d3, another check, and then now finally Magnus plays b3, and then we get d4 from Hikaru. And then now we get a queen c6 check, and now it's like you're looking at this, and it's looking like Black's king is a little bit suffocated. You may be able to force some kind of perpetual here at some point. Let's say for instance here. Eventually, if you want to get out of it, you know, you go here, and then king's got to go to a6 to get out of the perpetual check, and then you might have queen c4, which forces a queen trade. And with these three connected pawns, I mean, Magnus is going to be easily winning here. So really, Magnus, if he wants it, he has a draw, and so he goes for that. But instead of checking him again, he wants to put his king, Hikaru's king, in a bad position. So he moves his queen back, hitting this pawn again. I mean, this is hanging, but again, if you take, we take here, gonna win this other pawn. We have these two connected passers. So instead, Hikaru doesn't want to take, so he pushes g4, and now Magnus defends, and then we get Hikaru bringing his king back into the action, and now here Magnus begins pushing his advantage. These two connected pass pawns. Hikaru could take here, but it doesn't really matter because you're, let's say takes, I mean, takes, push. You could get this here. I mean, there's no checks anymore. Magnus is just gonna push, and like, there's not much you could do. I mean, you really have to play this move to get behind the pawn, but Magnus is not easily winning, but it's gonna make life hard for Hikaru. So, but he decides to take. Wait, it's not make sure I'm back in the actual game. Okay, he does end up taking, I believe. And so Magnus pushes, like I said, and then we get queen c5 check. Magnus brings his king here. Again, there's no really good checks, and this version is a little bit better for Hikaru because he can get behind the pawn on the 7th rank instead of the 8th rank. But again, it's not great for black. The queen's the worst blockader, as people say. And you know, if you look at the engine, it's gonna say +2 for white. So Magnus is definitely winning here. These pawns aren't really scary. This one pawn can stop them by itself because they're doubled. Queen has to stay back here to prevent this pawn from moving. So white has a clear advantage here. And then now we get queen d4 check, hitting the king. King moves up. He wants to bring his king in and to try to win this pawn. That's his only way to stop it, really. So Magnus checks again. He wants to keep the king a little bit farther away. And here, Hikaru, you know, offers a trade. And trading here is not really in Magnus's best interest because, let's say, king takes, they're going to win this pawn. King's a lot closer to the side. You might be able to get your king here, but then, you know, let's say, for instance, here, and yeah, the evaluation immediately goes to -6 because it's going to be, I mean, king's closer. You can't really stop these pawns from promoting. These white pawns are never getting through because of this construction here with black. So he cannot trade queens here. So Magnus ends up instead playing queen b7 or queen g7, excuse me, and king moves up, and then now we get finally from Magnus we get queen takes g6, and here Hikaru decides to play rook e5. I mean queen e5. I keep saying rook for some reason, and then king moves up, moves over, and then we get another queen check. King moves up to a3. Really, not a great position for Magnus's king here. It's very passive. Just trying to hide away from the checks really is the idea. Another counterattack again, you know, if Hikaru can't really take this pawn because then Magnus wins this pawn, and this pawn is hard to stop. So instead, Hikaru brings his king. Magnus does a little trick here with a discover check where he moves the pawn with check. King can take here. Actually, what's the idea? Let's see. What's the idea? So if king takes, this is how we learn, guys. If king takes, we'll have to see what Magnus does because I actually don't really see the idea. Oh yeah, this game actually ended on a mouse slip actually. So according to the engine, Magnus's best move is just to not that move obviously, is to take b6, and you know he's gonna want to push this majority here. I think there was some kind of mouse slip. Obviously Magnus doesn't mean to play queen, but he plays queen f6, a little bow test gambit action here for you guys. And so yeah, that's kind of how he loses the game, and then he ends up resigning, and Hikaru goes on to win this game in the Chessable Masters. And so as one of Magnus's last games as world chess champion, he blunders his queen, loses to Hikaru, and this is something that it kind of went around the internet, you know, mouse flip and everything. It happens. I mean, I've done the same thing many times. So very interesting. a little bit over my head. You know, these GMs are their positional ideas and things like that are much above us mere mortals. But very interesting to look at this as his final game, really technically as world chess champion, as this world chess championship begins. Hikaru gets his victory over Magnus, and yeah, that's about it. I just wanted to cover this game. I thought it'd be topical, with the World Chess Championship coming up. Really, as this video comes out, it's already begun. But yeah, I want to thank you guys for watching. Please, if you enjoyed, please like and subscribe. It really helps. And I look forward to seeing you guys soon. So peace.